What is up, my Squirtleites? It is I, your king, welcoming you back to more Let's Play Destiny. In the last episode, we finished the Sever mission, Forgiveness, and today, it is time to take a break from seasonal missions and dive into this season's dungeon, Duality. Now, there's going to be a lot of dialogue here at the opening of the dungeon. I'm just going to kind of let it play through before I get into explanations, because this dungeon's mechanics are very simple. However, the opening dialogue from Eris actually glitched in this playthrough, and I cannot get a good take of it no matter what I do. It just seems that Bungie broke it entirely, so no matter how many times I try to re-record it, it always comes out glitched. So the only recording I have is some old footage of me on my Titan, and so that's going to play to start things off before we dive right on in.
You arrive. Good. Yes. We have only a brief window of opportunity.
The darkness is thick here, coalesced inside this effigy of Emperor Calus.
It is tethered to his very mind. I have snared that thread, caught it between my fingers and woven it into a tapestry. One that I can weave you into. Enter Calus's consciousness. Use this opportunity to steal his darkest secrets from him.
Now go. Time is of the essence. I will be with you from afar.
And now, back to my hunter. All right, let's do this thing, but like I said, there's still a lot of dialogue yet, so I'm going to let it all play out.
Seem like reality, but it is not the one you know. Your mind now stretches across a vast gulf.
So, really quickly, the one mechanic that is important here is this bell mechanic. I'll get into it a little bit more, but you're going to see me using it quite a bit here just in this opening section. It's just a way of teaching you how the mechanic works. It's probably easy to guess what it does, but I'll give you more details here in a moment.
It's not what I anticipated. The imprint of Calus's consciousness is fractured, straining, as if Calus's mind is at war with itself.
All my history is etched here, from humble beginnings to my rise as Emperor. It is an ancient tradition of our people.
Calus? No, not Calus, but an echo of him. This is a recollection of a time since past.
My bell of conquest is so grand, because I have lived a grand life. One day, my daughter, yours will be just as majestic.
You are experiencing echoes of Calus's personal torment. Glimpses into his past which may provide insight to the future. I must focus to maintain your connection to this mindscape. From here, you must navigate these memories on your own.
And that's all she wrote. So yeah, we've pretty much got the gist of how this dungeon works. This is Calus's greatest memories and shames made manifest, and we need to fight our way through them to learn more about them in order to deal with the guy, as, well, he is kind of the overarching threat of this entire season. Now, let's explain the bell mechanic. So, there are two different dimensions that you're going to be spending time in this dungeon, and they are related to every single encounter as well as every single traversal section. They're very important. Now, there's two things to know about the bell. When you are going into the Nightmare Dimension, you can shoot it from absolutely anywhere on the map, but if you were trying to leave the Nightmare Dimension, you need to be standing next to the bell. There's a little circle that goes around the bell, and if you're not in it and you activate the bell but are in the Nightmare Dimension, you will die. Now, in most encounters, there is actually a time limit on how long you can be in the Nightmare Dimension, but in the traversal sections, not so much, so that's why there's not really a huge rush. The only problem is that if you die from this mechanic, your ghost remains in the Nightmare Dimension, making it impossible for you to be rezzed unless you res on your own. Otherwise, you will then come back into the normal dimension. So you've got to communicate with your teammates going through here, otherwise you can end up getting trapped. And in these traversal sections, it especially sucks because if they decide to go on without you, you're just screwed. You cannot complete the traversal section without them if they move on to the next bell, for instance. But that's pretty much how it works. Generally, when I run this dungeon, I always keep a shotgun or fusion rifle on hand because it is an extremely consistent way of one-shotting the bells while also making sure that I am close to them because, well, yes, you can activate them from afar when going into the Nightmare Dimension, unless otherwise, like absolutely needed, like right now where I'm going to have to shoot across this gap. You generally don't have to. You can always be close if need be, depending on the circumstance, or you designate somebody to activate them for you, which we will talk about that later when we actually get into the mechanics. Now, this first video is going to only be one of the encounters and 2 of the traversal sections, and the next video will be 1 traversal section and 2 encounters, and that they should be relatively around the same length. Now, I gotta say, I love this dungeon, but I know it's also a very unpopular dungeon. It's probably one of the dungeons that I am the most fond of that not a lot of people really like all that much, but I think it's just kind of a beautiful marriage of mechanics, even though if you don't follow its rules to the letter, it can get a little bit screwy. There are definitely some wonky interactions with the bell that I don't think are glitchy or inconsistent. It's just that a fundamental misunderstanding of the mechanics can make things actually quite difficult. Now, of course, even though this footage is not true to the actual season that it's taking place in, I still wanted to go with Solar and use a lot of things that would have been available at this time, given that, well, this was the height of Solar 3.0, Season of the Haunted, and I felt like that only made a lot of sense. But we are about to dive into the first encounter here, which is probably the most memorable outside of the final boss itself, and also usually the one that's going to test your knowledge of the mechanics the most. So,
You were made to be a sorrow bearer. I seek a hive commander, but those are not so readily available. So I made you.
and the one that Calus is talking to is actually none other than Galran, who we have not gone over in this Let's Play too much, but if you remember back in my Seasons of Forsaken video, back during Season of Opulence, Galran was the raid boss that was meant to steal artifacts from the Hive. So that's who he's referring to. Now, Galran in this context is actually just a big gladiator boss, and he's going to be constantly trying to melee you as you go. But now you can see that we are in the Nightmare Dimension. The Nightmare collapsing timer is counting down. However, every time you kill one of the standard bearers, the Nightmare collapsing timer gets another 10 seconds added to it. So as long as you're doing the mechanic right, you're given plenty of time. But then there's the bell. The bell is completely inaccessible unless you kill the Incendiors that are guarding it. In the reality dimension, all you have to kill is the Incendiors that are around the bell, but here in the Nightmare dimension, the Incendiors are always on the opposite side of the map. So, in the back part of the room, because there's 2 more, like, rooms that the standard bearers can be in back on the other side, back on that part of the room, that's where the Incendiors were, but there was no bell, so it's always one or the other. Now, what you do is you get these standards from the Scions, pick them up. I could have picked up 2, but I only picked up 1 because I let my teammate grab the other one. And then what you do is you put the standard down, you go into the room in the reality dimension, kill the Colossus, and then you're going to want to stay in this room. Now, me and one of my teammates, Phantomagorian, is in the other room waiting, and you can see now that the bell has just activated because all the Incendiors are dead. Now we just need to make sure that his Colossus is dead, and once that is done, he's going to call out to me and say that he's ready, and then we can activate this bell, which it looks like that is going to be now. So, in here, you're going to have a bunch of these visions of Galran. They're very weak, but they still can dish out a lot of damage. Just shotgun them, and generally you can one-shot them as long as all of your pellets hit at maximum damage. This is why I like bringing shotguns. Aim for the head if you can, though. It's a little bit stronger. Fusion rifles also work very great for this. But once they are all dead, the timer is counting down, but it is the person that is in the middle area's responsibility, which was Diameral here, to kill the Incendiors so that the bell will be ready for us to leave if need be. Now, I do believe we go for a 1 phase here, but you're supposed to watch the Nightmare collapsing timer here, and what you do is as soon as it starts to count down, I would say within about 8-7 seconds, you're going to want to run back to that bell and activate it, because if you don't, you will die in here. Now, the funny thing is you're going to actually get to see an interaction of both mechanics, because we just elected to not go for the bell, even though we all started to miss a lot of shots and run out of ammo here, when it's like, oh, wow, we got 10 whole seconds. This should be easy to finish. And then I absolutely choked here with my damage in this situation, then also needing to reload. But don't worry, because guess what? Everyone died at the same time. That can happen, but if the boss is dead, the game doesn't care. So it killed us for not coming out of the dimension in time, but the encounter did still complete, and we were still good to go. So I just wanted to kind of show that funny little interaction there. If you fail to make it in time, but somehow manage to still kill the boss. Otherwise, yeah, if you fail to make it in time at all, you just die, encounter starts over if the boss isn't dead, or you're smart and you run back to the bell and then do the entire thing all over again. Now, that's a very basic version of the standard grabbing bell ringing mechanic. We're going to get it a little bit more in the next one, kind of the same idea, but at a more advanced stage in the next encounter, and then the more complete version of that in the final encounter, as is often the case with dungeons where mechanics just build upon themselves.
Both different then.
Now, my friend who's up ahead is actually activating all of the switches. You can see right there, it's green. They're usually red when you walk up. Those are what extend these little crypts out from the walls, so you can actually traverse your way up them. If you have a really good movement ability, you can also just bypass them entirely. Now, to activate the second set, you're going to want to go to the right all the way to the opposite side of the room, back towards where you entered, but much higher up. So that's where they're going right now. I just kind of let them run along, and then they're going to activate my thing, although I do want to say that I think they both died trying to get back, and so I'm going to end up running ahead here into the rest of this traversal area. So it's been activated. Now we can continue. You're just going to want to follow your way all the way up to the top of this last crypt, and then down you go. There's this little sliding area, and mind you, at the time it was very easy to just die from physics impact damage, plus there's a pit there, so be careful. But nowadays, you literally can't die that way. Since the release of this dungeon, Bungie has made it impossible to die from physics deaths alone. You can go down to 1 HP, but you have to be finished off by an actual enemy bullet or your own damage, just like self-damage, to actually die that way. So now we just go through the rest of this area, which is just killing enemies and jumping. There is a small puzzle, but it always has the same solution. It's very, very simple. We'll get into that here in a second. There's really not much to it. But it is a thing that you want to do. But there's also a secret chest in that same room. I'm using Vex Mythoclast here because Vex Mythoclast, pretty much since the release of the Vault of Glass raid back during Beyond Light, has always been amazing. The only quote-unquote nerf they ever gave it was slightly changing its RPM from, I want to say, 360 to 390, if I'm not mistaken. So it just fires a little bit faster, but does a bit less damage. It still hits like a truck. It's a really, really good weapon. And also, that's just straight up overkill. Not even necessary to be using the linear fusion mode on this thing at any time. But once we kill all of these guys, there's just one big gap to jump across, which is easily the hardest gap for hunters to make, which is why in that little cut there, I actually switched to the Stompy's boots, especially because I always personally run a super low mobility hunter, so I was not going to make that without the Stompy's, but wanted to quickly switch off, and then as I jump back here, I do believe I switched back to what I was originally using, like right here in this cut. And now, as we jump up here, there are 4 doors all around the room. One of them is open. It's very easy to figure out which one, and there's a chest inside. Pretty simple. There's not really much more to it. But now begins the actual puzzle mechanic. So around this room, there are 4 statues, gladiator statues, all pointing in different directions. The one that is pointing towards the bell is the only correct one. The 2 that are pointing away need to be rotated twice, but the one that is pointing to the side, which is the one I'm going after, needs to be rotated 3 times. They're all 90-degree turns, and the one that is pointing to its left is going to be rotated counterclockwise every time. So once all 3 have been activated, they're going to be fixed back in the reality dimension. So we head back, and then once we do that, we will confirm that all of the statues are now pointing at the bell, and you'll know it worked because the floor begins to open up below, and that's the puzzle. Very, very simple. It's always the same solution every time. It's not like they switch it up or make it random or anything. It's just a little thing to do before you go any further, but also just kind of acts as a nice little bit of respite for the next encounter, because the next encounter is much more of a sprint than the last one was. So ladies and gentlemen, that's going to be it for this episode. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you all in the next one.